PNG Tonight. Hello, everyone. We will have another look at the motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister in Parliament today. With all the build-up, it wasn't even a threat. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill and his coalition partners defeated the motion 85 to 21. Apart from fireworks from Vanimo Green MP Belden Nama, the leader of the PNG party, who was obviously angry at not being given an opportunity to debate, refused to sit down as ordered by the Speaker, creating an uproar. 4 other members debated on the motion. Mover and Deputy Opposition Leader Sam Bassel was pointed in what he described as failures of the government. The other speakers were the leader of the People's Progress Party, Ben Micah, who is now in the opposition, and leader of government business, Finance Minister James Marape. But the real debate on the motion went to Morobe Governor Kelly Naru. His speech reflected the situation on the ground and the sentiments of many Papua New Guineans in what has been a country at the crossroads. Also, a lawyer by profession, Governor Naru was meticulous and articulate on the question of separation of powers, on the separate arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. He also spoke about rights, freedom, Christianity, and democracy that we embrace. Now, the people accused of wrongdoing are innocent until proven guilty in a legitimate court of law. We bring you this final day of the special session of Parliament as ordered by the Supreme Court. Here is the Speaker, the Honourable Theo Zurino, straight after prayer.
Honourable members, I have to inform the Parliament that His Excellency the Governor-General issued a writ on the 26th of May 2016 for a by-election to fill the vacant office of the member for South Bougainville, and that by the endorsement on the writ, it is satisfied that Mr. Timothy Masiu was duly elected as the member for South Bougainville Open Electorate. The honourable member was sworn into office at the National Parliament State Dining Room on Thursday, yesterday, 21st July, where he made his declaration of loyalty and declaration of office before me. I welcome the honourable member to the House. This sitting is a continuation of the Supreme Court ordered sitting of Friday, 15 July 2016. The only item of business for the House in today's sitting will be the debate and vote upon the vote of no confidence moved by Honourable Sam Bassel, and which was seconded by the Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare, and nominating Honourable Mr. Don Pollier as the alternate Prime Minister. Honourable members, the Chair intends to follow the orders of the Supreme Court completely and without any deviation. The orders of the Supreme Court are very clear, very explicit, and that this matter must be dealt with today, and there can be no further adjournment for any reason. With that, we shall proceed with the only item of business today, and that is to debate and vote on the motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister, Peter O'Neill. Thank you very much. Clerk of Parliament.
Notice number 295, the member for Bulolo.
Mr. Speaker, move that this Parliament has no confidence in the Prime Minister, Honourable Peter O'Neill, and nominates the member for Kandep, Honourable Don Pollier, to be elected as the next Prime Minister of the independent state of Papua New Guinea.
You can make a speech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why Parliament should not have no confidence in Peter O'Neill as Prime Minister? Mr. Speaker, we members of Parliament represent our people. We should be able to do so without interference. We have a moral duty as leaders to contribute to the sustainable future of our people. Our values, our experience tell us the biggest contribution we can now make for our people is to move that this Parliament has no confidence in Peter O'Neill as the Prime Minister of the independent state of Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, there are many reasons why members should have no confidence in Peter O'Neill as Prime Minister, and I will start with the work of Parliament. Heading O'Neill overrides the People's Parliament. Mr. Speaker, Peter O'Neill's limits meetings of Parliament. Parliament cannot undertake key functions. O'Neill does not allow Parliament to debate national policies and issues. This present motion of vote of no confidence is an example. The Supreme Court decision ordered this meeting because the executive blocked vote of no confidence 4 times with a committee of no bipartisan. We could have won any one of those votes of no confidence, but we were never given a genuine chance to bring the vote to this floor. The key issue is O'Neill block move by Parliament to use its constitutional powers. Mr. Speaker, to conclude, to make the wrong decision today would mean more of the same. Papua New Guineans want a change, and today it is up to us here on the floor to make a change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Governor from Morobe.
Mr. Speaker, what is the lesson in the suffering that we are going through that God is trying to teach us? What is the distress that we are faced with that God is trying to open our eyes to see? Mr. Speaker, I trust my speech will assist this House and honorable members to seriously and critically analyze the crisis and the situation we are faced with. The National Parliament, the National Executive, and the National Judicial System comprising of our courts. Under Section 99, subsection 3 of the Constitution, it is stated, and I quote, "In principle, the respective powers and functions of the 3 arms shall be kept separate from each other." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, this is the constitutional basis and the source of the principle of separation of powers by the 3 arms of government. Under the principle of separation of powers, there is a requirement and need for mutual respect to be maintained at all times between the 3 arms of the government, and in our situation, between the judiciary and the National Parliament. In this respect, Parliament has no right to interfere with the functioning of the courts in the discharge of their judicial function to dispense justice. And Mr. Speaker, likewise, the courts have no power to interfere with the way in which Parliament goes about to conduct its business. Mr. Speaker, the only qualification imposed on these 2 arms of government in the discharge of their respective powers and functions is that both arms of government must act within the requirement of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, in my humble submission and view, recent events and orders emanating from the Supreme Court has brought to light the need for proper judicial interpretation to be given to the principle of separation of powers. Some pertinent issues that need judicial interpretation are as follows. Can the Supreme Court issue declaratory orders and directions to Parliament to get Parliament to conduct its business in a particular day according to a certain agenda and within a specified period of time? Are the nature and extent of the orders of the Supreme Court ordering the reconvening of Parliament for this special sitting a violation of the principle of separation of powers, in that it is an interference with the way in which Parliament is supposed to manage and conduct its business? Can the Supreme Court issue supplementary orders that are not the subject of a declaratory order sought in the Supreme Court reference? Can the internal proceedings, procedures and processes of Parliament, which are supposed to be non-justiciable or not subject to scrutiny by the courts under Section 115 of the Constitution, be in fact subjected to the scrutiny of the court, such as in this case, and subject to the issuing of declaratory orders and additional supplementary orders, such as the case here? Mr. Speaker, What are the exact ambit, limit, and extent of the mutual coexistence, respect, and operation of the principle of separation of power between Parliament and the courts in our constitutional democracy, which we must embrace and follow? Mr. Speaker, these and other pertinent and relevant constitutional issues must be the subject of a constitutional reference by Parliament to the Supreme Court to get judicial clarity on the demarcation and mutual coexistence and functioning of the principle of separation of powers between Parliament and the judiciary. In terms of the issues raised in the vote of no confidence motion, Mr. Speaker, a number of issues have been raised in the motion on the vote of no confidence against the Honourable Prime Minister. They include, amongst others, excessive payments of government funds to a law firm, Paul Paraka Lawyers, the borrowing of 3 billion kina UBS loan, the purchase of the Israeli generators, the general downturn in the state of the nation's economy, and others as addressed by the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, most of these issues have also been raised by university students, NGOs, civil society groups, and some concerned professionals and their unions. The general call was that based on these allegations of wrongdoing in office, the Honourable Prime Minister must step down or step aside and submit himself to the law or police for questioning in relation to these allegations. The call was that under the law, the Prime Minister has to do that. There were even calls for the Prime Minister to resign over these allegations. A warrant of arrest was even issued by a magistrate for the arrest of the Prime Minister for questioning in relation to these allegations. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has refused to step aside. In his defense, the Prime Minister responded to the allegations made against him and even took out full-page newspaper replies in relation to the allegations. The Prime Minister even went to court to seek protection of the law over the manner and way in which the allegations were made against him, and even challenged the warrant of arrest issued against him in court. Mr. Speaker, on the one hand, we have allegations being leveled against the Prime Minister to step down and submit himself to questioning according to the law. And on the other hand, the Prime Minister is refusing to step down and is calling on the protection of the same law in relation to the allegations leveled against him. Mr. Speaker, in this situation, who is right and who is wrong? What does the law say on this situation? Mr. Speaker, under Section 37, subsection 1 of our Constitution, every person, including the Prime Minister, has the right to the full protection of the law. Mr. Speaker, under our Constitution and the laws, no one can be held liable for an offense or found guilty of an offense unless he is first charged, processed, and found guilty according to law. A person is presumed to be innocent until found guilty according to law. These are the requirements found under Section 37 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the issue of dispensation of justice according to law, Section 155 of the Constitution provides that only the national judicial system, which comprises of the courts, is the appropriately prescribed and qualified body to dispense justice. No other person or body outside of the national judicial system is authorized to dispense justice unless empowered to do so by the law. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the allegations against the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's counterclaim to seek the protection of the law in relation to these allegations, all or most of these claims and issues are now before the courts. Because of the fact that these issues are now before the courts, we will need to wait for the courts to dispense justice. Mr. Speaker, the wheels of justice has been set in motion. We must allow justice to take its course. We must exercise restraint and be patient. However long it takes, justice must and will prevail in the end. Based on the requirement of legal justice according to law, the Prime Minister must be given the benefit of the doubt. He is innocent until proven guilty according to the law. Mr. Speaker, I must say something on the exercise of our constitutional rights and freedoms. Mr. Speaker, our Constitution gives our people a number of important rights and freedoms which they are entitled to exercise. The freedom of expression under Section 46 of the Constitution. Section 47, freedom of assembly and association. Section 51, right to freedom of information. Section 52, right to freedom of movement. Section 55, equality of citizen. All citizens enjoy the same rights and freedom. Section 56, special rights of citizens to vote in election and to hold public office. Mr. Speaker, it must be remembered that all these rights referred to are not absolute rights, but qualified rights. They are not absolute in the sense that you can exercise those rights in any way, manner, and form you see fit. No. They are qualified rights in the sense that we are called upon to exercise those rights and freedoms with restraint and responsibility. We are obligated to ensure that the exercise of those rights and freedoms do not interfere with, violate, or infringe on the rights of our fellow citizens who also have the same right to exercise their rights and freedoms under the law. Regrettably and unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, in recent times, we have witnessed the exercise of those rights and freedoms going beyond the reasonable bounds of the exercise of those rights and freedoms. Mr. Speaker, under the disguise of the exercise of those rights and freedoms, certain segments of society have seen fit to advocate extreme measures beyond the reasonable exercise of those rights and freedoms. By violating, interfering with, and infringing on the rights of other members of our communities, by causing, issuing, and actioning threats, undue influence, intimidation, harassment, injuries to persons and properties, destruction, and even death. Mr. Speaker, these violations are not only caused by those supporting the call for the Prime Minister to step down, but also allegedly by the police against the students, and also by the students against the students themselves. Even professional people in our society are calling for the shutdown of essential public services and the withdrawal of labor as a means to an end. Mr. Speaker, this is unacceptable conduct. Industrial avenues are available to channel industrial grievances. The use of unlawful means, such as the call to withdraw labor to disrupt essential services to our people, is improper and unlawful, and the proponents of this strategy must be held accountable and dealt with according to the law, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, to the extent that breaches of the peace have occurred, coupled with injuries to persons and properties resulting in death and destruction, the full force of the law must be brought to bear on those responsible. Mr. Speaker, these people are domestic terrorists and insurgents who must not escape. They must face the full force of the law. Mr. Speaker, this country is governed by the rule of law. We cannot allow the rule of law to deteriorate at the pleasure of those hell-bent on abusing the rights and freedoms given to us by our Constitution, and those who are hell-bent on causing death and destruction to pursue their cause. This is unacceptable conduct and behavior. It is wrong morally, ethically, and legally. We are all subjected to one law, and justice according to this one law must be allowed to prevail. Mr. Speaker, in terms of my position on behalf of my people, province, and the Christian Democratic Party, I say this. Based on the foregoing reasons that I have expressed, I am of the respectful view that under our Constitution and laws, we must exercise restraint, be patient, and allow justice according to law to prevail on the case involving the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister remains innocent until proven guilty according to law. Mr. Speaker, the sacred mandate and will of the people bestowed on the government and the Prime Minister should not be easily and lightly interfered with unless there is cogent and convincing reasons to do so, or unless exceptional circumstances exist to overturn the mandate and will of the people. Mr. Speaker, we are only 9 months away from the general election. If the performance of this government or the Prime Minister is wanting, it is for the people to make that call for change. At this point of time, what will the alternative government achieve within a short period of time? Mr. Speaker, it is not a viable option to change government based on allegations leveled against the government, which are yet to be proven, and moreover, it is wrong to change government through the use of unlawful means resulting in disruption to services, injuries to persons and properties, and destruction and even death. Mr. Speaker, people want peace and justice to prevail. Let patience, peace, and justice prevail. In my respectful view, I am not convinced that at this point in time, cogent and convincing reasons have been given or exceptional circumstances exist to warrant a change in government. This is because justice according to law is yet to be delivered, and political justice expressing the will of the people that has been expressed in the government and the Prime Minister must be allowed to prevail until the people themselves decide otherwise. In my view, political justice by this Parliament at this time must be dispensed properly and correctly and assisted by the dispensation of legal justice. Whilst legal justice is yet to be conclusively dispensed, it is my view that this Parliament cannot prematurely dispense political justice based on allegations which are still subject to judicial scrutiny. It may be even a disrespectful thing to do and may even be a violation of the principle of separation of powers that we are talking about. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, in answer to the gospel I quoted earlier from the book of Job, it will become abundantly clear that this country is now called upon to collectively exercise one of the simple but yet greatest virtues of human nature, and that is, quote, patience, end of quote. You may stop easy now wait. Mr. Speaker, there's a saying, good things come to those who patiently wait. Mr. Speaker, a Chinese proverb affirms this. It says, patience is power. With time and patience, the mulberry leaf turns into silk, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, that is the lesson God is trying to teach us in our suffering and distress, to exercise restraint and patience. Patience will attract peace. Peace will propagate harmony and order in our country. It is not God's will to advocate the use of unlawful means to change government. And the rule of law does not allow a change of government. For the foregoing reasons and considerations, Mr. Speaker, I decline to support the vote of no confidence against the Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Allow the member for KVN.
So the point I'm making to the Prime Minister, be sensitive, be truthful that you have to act decisively. And I think it is about time that we stop using government. We stop using our numbers. We stop using our muscles. We stop using the system of government to hide, run away and hide from the reality, Mr. Speaker, of the problems that are inside this government and the problems that are outside in our people. Let us not run away, because we are not going to run away for that long, Mr. Speaker. Today you can hold your numbers, you can psych up, now you talk you got a number, now you try to shout me down, but you cannot run away from the truth. That your government is not going to last long, it will collapse. Your government is going to collapse. And you know why it's going to collapse? Because it is full of men and women who are not telling the truth, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker,
Having said this, we have before us today a motion that is totally hollow in substance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have a motion before us that has nothing to do with the advancement of our country, but has everything to do with the ugly side, the lustful side of an attempt to grab power, period, nothing else. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have a motion that has again harmed Papua New Guinea's international image and has confused the very people who want to invest in the economy and create jobs. What hypocrisy when you talk about creating jobs when you are causing harm to the country's image. The headlines you grab every time, both in formal media and social media. Mr. Speaker, the headlines we generate goes and has direct impact on the image our country portrays and investors. Mind you, we need to attract foreign investors. They sit and they read the headlines. And I don't need to go through every instance of the sort of headlines that has been propagated by our friends on the other side, Mr. Speaker. We have a motion that seeks to replace the most successful Prime Minister in the development history of our country, Mr. Speaker, on record, the Honourable Peter O'Neill, and to attempt to replace him with the Honourable Don Pollier. I'll go through that in a minute. The only purpose of such a malicious motion is an attempt to create instability. Mr. Speaker, this is not the first time. This is the fourth attempt of a vote of no confidence by the opposition. The previous three was rejected by the House Committee, Mr. Speaker. Change of government under Section 145 is the serious, most important